Rickie, head of fashion at Nordstrom, recently moved to LA, mom of two beautiful children, and neighbor and friend. You good?
Still standing.
Hey, Rickie.
Hi, Claire.
Thanks for being here
Thanks
today.
for having me.
It's so fun. Neighbors.
I know, in LA.
Welcome.
Thanks.
How long have you been here?
We moved in August, but it's been great.
Good. Has it been great?
It's been great. It's been so busy. I can't. There's
I know.
no other reaction to have. But yeah.
I know. Settling the two kids into school.
You know, we've been talking about a move for a long time in our house. My husband moved to New York for me. I think he thought he was on a 3 to 5 year plan and he stayed for 15. So
Wow.
It's been 15 years of conversations about moving to LA. So the fact that it's finally happened is great.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
So you brought him there.
I brought him there. I got my dream job. I was working at Vogue magazine. And I said, he was living in San Francisco in the Bay Area. And I said, you got to move to New York or we're breaking up. And he was wise and moved. But I think he thought we were on a 3 to 5 year plan. And it ended up being a lot longer than that.
That's so nice.
Yeah.
Well, I brought you on today because I look up to you a lot, and I have for what feels like decades. You are one of my sister's mentors early on in her career, and you always had an aura in our house of kind of an older sister vibe.
Good.
Yeah, just
Better than the alternative.
totally like a guiding force, a guiding light. And I've always seen you. It's such a professional, such a serious light, such an earnest light. And you're also fun and saucy and bouncy socially. Like you have just so much to offer. I just want to jump right into it. What does success mean to you? What does inner success mean to you?
Is kicking off with the hard questions. What does success mean? I think success, there's a lot of ways to define it, right? There's professional success. My career, it's something that it's a very big part of my life. I love working. I've had the fortune of many great roles in the industry. I'm in the fashion industry. Grace, her sister, we work together both at Vogue and also at W. And then there's personal success. And that's defined by the happiness of my children, of my husband, of my parents, my sister. And then there's the success of being able to marry those two things, right? And how can you coexist with success professionally, success at home, and then personal happiness. So it's evolving. I don't think there's one goalpost. I think what I've learned over the years is that any definition of success, once you hit it, you find the next. So it's not as if someday you think, I've done it, So it's a journey that we're always on.
People on the outside looking in see a very successful person. They see someone who has married the inner and outer success. Can you speak more to the goalpost and constantly moving it?
Sure. I think it's about change, right? So I think that professionally, I work in the fashion industry and I have my entire career, but there are so many different facets of it. So having been on the brand side working at Prada, having been on the editorial side working at Vogue, that hunger and curiosity to continue, right? There are parts of my career where you sort of think, okay, I could sit back and think this is success, but what is, the switch to retail is something I had never done. I was interested in understanding how the consumer really engages with brands, engages with products, what makes someone tick and their willingness to spend money on an item of clothing or an accessory. So I think, as much as I'm a Taurus and I don't like change, I believe it is what makes us better. And with each role, it's opened my eyes to what success can look like because you only know what you know, right? And so if you don't get out of your comfort zone, you never know what else is out there. And it's hard, but it's what's made me continue to redefine what success looks like because each experience builds on the next, both from a networking perspective, a financial perspective, all the goalposts.
It's tough because, you are in one lane for a long time and you identify yourself with one institution and the outside world with that same institution, and then changing it feels like you have to have a new brand identity in inside and outside. For me too, as a singer, as an agent, now as a talk show host, if you will, but podcast host, it's a lot.
It's a lot, and it's so true. You think that you are your own person, but it's very easy to be defined by where you work, by where you live, where your kids go to school. And it's hard to decouple those things. And I'd be lying if I didn't say it takes time to find yourself in all of it, because it's easy to, but it all is going to change. I mean, I think there's sort of always, I have to step back and think it was all going to change. So as an example, we moved, like I said, in August, and I loved the school that my kids went to in New York. I talk about it a lot and sort of reminisce. My husband's like, but it was all he was graduating. You know what I mean? Like,
it was a preschool?
It was preschool. It was great. But I think you sort of have to step back and say, you can always compare, right? Comparing, even when I left magazines, so people always say, do you miss it? Of course I miss it. Of course, because I loved it. But I can miss it and still do new things, and you sort of have to know that. And even over the course of the 12 years while I was working in publishing, it evolved, right? And so you miss parts of it that maybe don't even exist anymore, or new parts are better than the old parts. And so I don't, you have to, the older I get, it's more about what does that all look like for me, as opposed to Rickie from whatever company I'm working for. It's sort of finding yourself, and it's hard.
Yeah, it's super hard. I didn't get into that college that I wanted to go to, so I never got that initial academic stamp.
Right.
And then I went and I took such a different direction, and I moved to Rome where my parents were, and I started singing for popes and doing all sorts of wonderful, amazing things, and also being completely crazy. But I realized very young that the institution isn't what defines you. You define yourself within whatever institution you're in. So how do you kind of peel back the layers of the brand names and really shine and really know yourself and trust yourself?
I don't know if I figured that out. So
okay.
When I do, I'll let you know. No, I think you have to build on them. It's not about leaving one. I mean, there's parts of me, I feel like, I've said this to my former boss, I feel like I still work there, and sort of, so you take it with you. And I think a lot of, when you ask about success, a lot of success for me too are the networks and the communities I've been able to build. It's why I love the fashion industry, because at the end of the day, it's work, but it's also people that I love being around. I thrive being with designers. I thrive off their creativity. I also love the business side. Hearing how I love being with designers. And we sort of have this, like, I remember when you were starting out. So I think it's about building any institution you've been with, like, what's the community that you got out of it? And even now, as I moved to Nordstrom and moved to the retail side, I'm tapping into that community from Vogue. I'm tapping into that community from Prada. So I value that community and those people who become sounding boards or partners, or their willingness to do something with me in my new world because of the trust they have from the past. So I think success is also wrapped in, like, is it longer term than just, that one moment in time?
I love that. Do you see you thrive off of creativity? I do too. I love to be with creative people.
I love it. I love meeting new designers. And then I also, I love being able to also give them advice, right? Because you can be, I think the balance of creative and success, business success, business acumen, you can be the most creative, most talented designer in the world. But if you can't produce a collection, ship a collection on time, package it up in a way that's digestible for a customer, how successful are you? So, but you need advice and support along the way.
It's a tough industry, the fashion industry, because it's ever changing. You need your audience, you need it quickly, unless you have endless money to spend. Do you find that authenticity in the designers is what prevails in their success in their companies?
For sure. It has to feel authentic. It's product first. I always say that, you can have the greatest story in the world, but what does your product look like, feel like? You've got product. Product is king.
Because you're bringing it home, and you're using the product in the bathroom, in your closet, and in a cocktail party.
And you want it to feel good and look good and not fall apart, all the things. So I think product most important, and also doesn't have a point of view. Because there's a lot of choice today. And what is the thing that makes yours different, right? We don't need another piece of clothing, but what makes those jeans, different than the other?
Levi's?
Exactly. And so I think it's authenticity. I think it's the story and determination, right? Like, it is that you can have spikes. I've watched so many designers that I think about someone like Zach Posen. he's seen high highs, he's seen lows, and now he's back, at the Gap. And
I love Zach.
and then so you've known, we've known each other through the years, and and it's so great to see the success, but there are ebbs and flows like any business.
Right. And I think it takes a character who understands that there are ebbs and flows and is not going to give up. Perseverance.
Correct.
Especially in the fashion industry.
Correct. And it's a very visible industry, right? Like there's shows and their parties and all look so glamorous, right?
Glamorous.
You cannot be in it for the glamour. You cannot be in it for the glamour because there's a lot of parts that are not. And
drive that home because I don't think anyone knows that. It looks glamorous.
It looks glamorous.
And even when you're in it, it is glamorous. There's so many parts of the job that's glamorous.
There are, but there's a lot that isn't.
Yeah.
And now having worked on sort of all sides of it, you see how, you peel back all the layers and there's a lot there. There's a lot of depth, which again is what kind of keeps you coming back, right? It's the thing about fashion is that it's always evolving. So every, designers are producing on average about 4 collections a year. That depending on the size of your business, that changes. But that is being creative on a dime. That is a constant need for newness. So you really have to have a strong foundation to be successful.
You spoke about your community.
Yes.
And the importance of your community and the importance of your friends. I will attest that you have an incredible network, not just business network. You have incredible people that love you in a lot of different cities and people that look up to you. How do you go about building relationships and how do you retain your integrity?
Great question. No, the community aspect is so important. I think take every opportunity to get to know people, right? So both within like my first job out of college, I was a freelance closet assistant at Vanity Fair magazine. We worked in a closet. We had no windows and it was great. And there were about, I don't think 20 of us packed in on any given day, but it was me and one other assistant. And he's a dear friend to this day. We were in it together. I think all we did was return clothes and shoes all day, incoming, outgoing. We were glorified messengers. It was fine. But, you stayed in touch, right? And so as our careers evolved and he, we're still very good friends, right? So you build and take that opportunity to meet other editors. It's a small industry at the end of the day. So sort of excelling, building that community. And then the next role, now you become partners, right? I went to the brand side. So when I need friends in magazines, sort of picking up the phone. But, there's the eventing piece. It's funny because I go to a lot of events. And I think to some people, it's like, why do you do that? Say no more. And I'm always torn because on one hand, it's true. Like I'd like to be home. There's certainly the push-pull about being home and how to manage one's time. But I found particularly early in my career before I had kids, going to events was a way of sitting at a dinner table and having real conversation with people. And you can meet in a showroom and you can, be in a business meeting and you only get one side of people. But to go break bread with them and ask them questions about themselves, everyone loves to talk about themselves. It's just a reality. And I think my mom taught me that early. She's like, if you're ever stuck at a dinner party and you don't know anyone, just ask them about themselves. Yeah. And so through those events, you get to know the human side and that builds. So then when it becomes a professional conversation, you have some foundation of trust and understanding. And then also I think showing up for people is really important. You want to support, like I said, I love the designers when they do shows or they do events, like being there and supporting them is important. And that's just allowed me to continue to foster those relationships and it's great. And then other editors, right? Like we're all stuck sometimes and you sort of being able to pick up the phone and say, what do you think of this? And I have a group of other friends and editors that we're on a text chain. It's sort of a constant barrage of, what do you think of this?
Creating pop culture and fashion. That text message alone, you could just
it's pretty good.
Print it.
And no, there'll be no printing of that text message.
This is a terrible collection.
But, I think some people like to work in isolation and I am not one of those people.
Yeah, it's very
I love group thing. One of my challenges here since moving is that I work from home and I miss being in office. I miss water cooler chat. I think there's so much value in walking through the hallway and just getting someone's quick take as opposed to this sort of formal Zoom call. You have 30 minutes to get all the information. I think so much comes in the hallway. So, that's some change that I'm working through. And when I get back to New York and I'm in the office there, it like fills my bucket or whatever the right way of saying that is. But, you find your ways of finding that even if you can't do it physically.
It's more conducive to motherhood, at least, because you can get the kids out of the door, you can drive them to school, come home. You just have more time. The 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours commuting a day is now working.
Yeah.
So you can spend, my time is transactional because I prioritize my family, but I do like to have a career.
Yeah.
And need and want to have a career.
And that is the real, in my 40s, I think that's the, fashion is an amazing industry. I love it. Like, I travel really all the time, but there are 2 times a year in September and February when it's the collections. And that's, in total 4 weeks. I tend to do about 2.5 weeks on the road. So it's New York, London, Milan, and Paris. Learning to delegate. I love London Fashion Week, but often a wonderful woman on my team goes to London. And it's like, it's not because I don't want to be there, but at some point you have to, one, support people to have that experience and make room. I think that's a really important thing. You got to make room for others. I should be replaceable at the end of the day. And if my team is not, able to step in for me, then I'm not doing my job right. So building up my teams, like I love, your sister, obviously one of them, but the greatest compliment I can get from people and success to me is when people say, I used to work with you or for you. And it's something, it stays with me or whatever. It's a positive memory of our time or sort of my leadership. And I watch it with my dad. I think people I worked with my dad in business, they are still coming up to me to this day being like, it was the best period of my career. And I think that's such a compliment and a testament to who he was as a leader. And so I try and strive to do the same.
Well, yeah, you did make an impression on Grace because you made such an impression that it's made an impression on me.
It's good.
It's great. So humility. I've never heard anyone say, I should be replaceable. I usually hear people in positions of power saying everyone else is replaceable. That is a beautiful thing to hear that, just to say, I'm replaceable, because we all are at the end of the day going to die.
We are.
And
there's a few things that are certain in life. That's one of them. Yeah.
Exactly. And we need to be replaceable. Can you speak more about humility and how you've developed your humility and how you stay humble? I mean, it's pretty incredible.
Thanks. I don't know, my mother.
Yeah. Well, that's enough of an answer. Yeah.
Certainly it has a huge impact on my life. And no, I think that humility is something that I admire in people. I think I've watched, egos play a big role. And, we all are only as good as the people we work with are, the people around us, whether that's in a personal setting or professional setting. So, you got to think bigger than just yourself.
I often see that ego gets in the way of the creative process, of, building systems in a business. So it's good. This is why, for me, a lot of vulnerability and strength are coupled. Like when I see someone who can be really honest, I'm interested mostly in the human side. I'm not really interested in anything else. So you at the dinner party, getting to know people, that's kind of where I shine and where like all of my light goes off, because I just love people. I love what makes them wake up,
tick,
motivated. I love what makes them tick.
Totally. And as I moved to LA, right, like in New York, it's so easy because you're out on the streets. You can see what you suddenly you're like, everyone's wearing a Barber jacket or everyone's wearing a short jacket, right? Like that totem jacket.
You go to Brooklyn?
No.
All the art vibes?
No, not as often as I should, but, so you can very quickly see what's starting. And then if it takes off in New York, that with time, it's going to go elsewhere. But I think even at dinner conversations, it's like, everyone's kind of telling you what's going on in their lives or what, but suddenly you've based off my interests. So let's say when I had kids, it was like I gravitated to other women who had kids and hearing their stories and how they coped, because it changes your whole life, and
when you have kids, you need community.
Oh my gosh. I've never felt it as much as I did.
When you walk around LA, there's no trending.
I mean, it's trending, but it's different.
Okay.
It's different. I feel like in New York, everyone gets dressed up. It's funny. People are, what's the biggest change? How's it been? Like that sort of $1 million question. And there have been a lot of things to get used to or to develop, but sartorially, I found it particularly challenging. And I am not a jeans person, but I moved to LA and I was like, I'm going to be a jeans person. And I wore jeans and t-shirts and, and then I finally, about a month ago, was like, Rickie, this is not you.
Yeah.
And I would go to parties and I got all dressed up there was one party and I put on a cocktail dress. It was like someone's birthday. It was this whole thing. Everyone was in jeans or something far more casual than me. So anyways, I've gone back to who I am and how I like to dress. And I'm just going to let that work in LA. But I find in New York, because you're out on the streets, you're just seeing so much more. Whereas here, we're in cars, we're at home. It's a little harder to pick up on it.
We're tucked away.
Yeah.
And people, as you said, don't really dress in the way that they do in New York.
Actually, I think people dress well. There's, certainly it's more casual.
It's more casual is what I mean.
For sure. But look at you.
I'm dressed because I knew you were coming today.
Every time I've seen you, you've been dressed. So
I see it as a sign of respect. I'm a bit old school. I'm a bit traditional. And especially when I'm performing, I like to dress up.
Me too.
When I book these big national acts and they show up in sneakers, it kills me. But, I understand that, the sneaker culture is popping. So got to respect it.
Yeah.
But I'm not big on the, casual wear when it comes to dollars and cents. I think,
yes,
dress up.
I agree. I like to dress up, but that's,
two old ladies.
Exactly. We might be alone on this one, but yeah.
100%. So are there any hot trends coming out in 2025 or 2026 that we all need to know about? Or maybe you can't tell us because that's...
No, I mean, listen, trends, I sort of hate the word trends, which is hard because I'm sort of in the business of packaging products to tell people trends. I think we went through a phase where, first of all, with TikTok, trends have just come and gone at such a fast pace that's hard to predict them the way we used to, right? Everyone sort of used to coalesce around very big ideas that, you'd sort of watch everyone do. TikTok has changed all of that.
Even for fashion.
It comes quickly. What goes viral, you definitely cannot anticipate the way you used to, which I think makes it exciting. It forces everyone to react faster. So you don't, lead times can be very big, but they can sort of prohibit you from picking up on the moment. But trend-wise, you're sort of always looking at culture. It's a mix of, they're always colors, right? They've just forecasted the colors for 2025, and I'm forgetting the name of it, but I think the Pantone color one was sort of a purple blue. Blue, a very important color for 2025. We've been talking a lot about red and burgundy this year, and we sort of see that color evolution coming. But I think that trends are often most impacted. That's something I learned in editorial, right, around the culture. And so there are certain big moments, like sports is certainly, something that we've been seeing with the Olympics. They're coming to LA in a few years. We've got the World Cup coming in 2025. So where sports influence, there are a lot of great designers from Wales Bonner and Martine Rose, and they really pull that sports culture into their work. I'm very interested in what Prada is doing with NASA and in space, and a lot of talk around space travel. So, right, you think about these cultural layers, and then how does that manifest itself from a fashion perspective, right? And you think about the fact that Prada is dressing astronauts going into space, like that is fashion and culture and all wrapping it all in one. So are we going to start wearing more silver? Like, I don't know, but it's sort of, you take those context, and I think it puts fashion in perspective and can certainly influence how we're thinking about our stories and what stories we're telling, and faces, right? I think a big part around what I do is, or even meeting with designers and brands, it's themselves, it's the designers, it's the product, but it's also their community. I think Alessandro Michele does that better than anyone when he was at Gucci and now he's at Valentino, but it was just as much also like the models in his shows, the people that he brought to the Met Gala, right? Like Harry Styles or Florence Welch, like they signified who his person was, like who his vision for Gucci or who his vision for Valentino is. So I look at all of that. That's why I love going to shows. Again, people are like, you don't need to go to as many shows. For me, a show is just as much about the collection as it is about the set, the music, who's in the front row, what are they wearing? So then you understand what that brand is trying to communicate. And in my role to now, it's sort of how can we bring some of that magic into our stores, in front of our customers? Because you might not get that just looking at a mannequin or on a rack, but the magic of that is because all those, signals that went into that collection. So I'm, you always have to, you go into a room and it's like, you got to look around. I think Grace sort of famously said in one of those fashion documentaries, like sitting in a car, it's so easy, especially now, to like look at your phone. look out, see what's out there, see how people are dressing, where they're going. When Grace and I were at W, our editor-in-chief was Stefano Tonki. Stefano, while amazing in fashion, is also very well known in the arts world. Mm-hmm. And he had a thing where he was like, on every trip, we had to go to a museum. And it was sort of like, it's so easy to just spend your day only going to shows and, sticking to why you're there, but take a minute to go to an exhibition, take a minute to go see culture. And that will help inform the work just as much as the fashion show.
We do a lot of museums in my house. My eldest doesn't love playgrounds. He loves museums. So
fabulous.
I mean, I don't know.
Lucky you.
I get it. I know. I grew up in museums and then I kind of hated them around age 10.
Okay.
And I didn't go to a museum till I really met my husband. A little bit in college, obviously, because you have to.
Yeah.
And now here I am living in museums again. So it's the best.
It does. And it opens your eyes. And it really, it adds a layer. And I think that's what I loved about working in editorial. It was, the photographers, there was fashion photographers, but there were also arts photographers. And we did a lot of that at W, and it's fun.
Did you always know you wanted to be in fashion?
I did. My poor father wanted a lawyer and a doctor, and he got one that works in fashion, and my sister's in the beauty industry.
I love it.
He's sort of thinking, what did I do wrong? I grew up around it. So I caught that bug. I grew up in Florence, Italy in the 90s. And that was, really the golden era, and watching those shows. And I couldn't imagine doing anything else. I studied business and Italian in college. I didn't major in fashion or study anything related to fashion or marketing, but I spent my summers interning. And those internships and being in an office environment, my job, I often worked in PR departments, and my job, and maybe a sign of my age, was to do the press clippings. So I'd have to go in super early, take all the newspapers, cut out anything that sort of mentioned the brand that I was interning for, and then create books of sort of all the press clippings. And I loved it. I love the chaos of an office. So I caught that bug pretty early. And I interned at Vogue when I was in college. And my internship, I worked very closely with Tani Goodman, who is the fashion director of Vogue at the time. She still styles many of their covers. She's a legend. And, mentor, it's funny because people talk about mentors. I've never had sort of a formal mentorship with anyone. And I can't tell if maybe I missed something in life because I don't have someone who is my mentor. But I had women and men that I really look up to, and whose careers. And when you asked me about humility and how I learned that, yes, my mother, but also someone like Tani. I mean, she is such a class act. I mean, she is so warm and wonderful.
She really is
the best taste in the world, and she has access to everything. And she is just incredible to be around. And so I think very early on, sometimes magazines can get a wrap around the culture, especially in those days. And Tani was the opposite of that. She was, I was the intern. I was packing trunks and unpacking trunks, and she would acknowledge me. She would say, thank you. She'd sort of bring me onto set. There was one I remember, I was her intern. We did a Jennifer Connelly cover shoot. We were out at a horse farm in New Jersey. And the magic of being on set and watching that picture come together made me realize that this is what I wanted to do. And I remember it so vividly. And that's, I don't know.
It was like your
years ago.
Aha moment.
And I see Tani all the time now. And when I got to Nordstrom, she came and did the first shoot. My first designer campaign, Tani came and styled. And so it's women like that. And I only hope to, continue to evolve. And I watched her be able to do that with other people too. Gabriella Crayford-Johnson was one of her assistants, I think would say the same thing. There's so many of us that sort of look up to her and what she taught us. So that's an example of someone who I think really had a big impact on my career.
Some people say it's tough to be powerful and soft, or tough to be powerful and warm.
Yes.
Tani seems like she can embody it well. You seem like you can embody it well.
It's funny because you never want to be taken advantage of, right? Mm-hmm. I think that's sort of can come up. There is no reason to be mean. I don't think you learn more from that. I think,
or get more done, or get more out of people.
Yeah. But being, I think you can be kind, but still give good feedback, right? So I think it's not about being nice or mean. I think it's, are you direct when you need to be direct? I am not fearful in anyone's work to me. When there is feedback to be given, I'm happy to give it. And I think being direct about it, we don't have to be a jerk while you do it. So I think it's finding the balance and finding the tone and doing it when it's justified. But always, no matter what the news is, delivering it with a, kindness.
A smile.
This is karma. I believe in it. So
I do too. It's tough sometimes for me to be completely honest with my emotions because I don't want to hurt the other person on the other side.
Me too. Even with my kids, right? Like it's hard. And my husband is way better at disciplining than I am.
Mine too.
He's like, you have to be better at saying no. I'm working on it. We all have our things to improve on. But, you sort of, if they're not speaking to someone the way that I think they should, but you have to say something. Otherwise, you're just perpetuating that that's okay. So, I think those lessons, no matter what environment you're in, personal, professional, you gotta step in where you have to.
Totally. What are you manifesting for the future?
It's such a funny word because I'm not really,
you're grounded in reality and making it all happen.
Kind of.
You're not in your head.
I watched this clip kind of gets served to me a lot on Instagram, and it's Oprah doing some talk, and she's talking about, I know, I love Oprah too. And she's sort of talking about, you have to know what you want, right? Like, I feel like probably regurgitate the whole thing because it comes up.
Oh, okay.
That in order to get what you want, you have to know what you want. And
I know that clip.
Do you know that clip?
Of course.
Why does it keep following me around the internet?
Because here we are talking about it.
Here we are. So I'm going to get it right after I leave here and open up my phone. And I sort of think, do I know exactly what I want? Like every time I see it, I'm like, crap, what do I want? But sometimes it finds you, you have to, I just moved here. Like, I don't know what the future holds. So I'm always open. I'll take, any meeting, I'll speak to, it all changes. You can think you know what you want, but something happens or, the industry changes. So it will evolve with time. So manifesting, it's kind of it's not something I think about a lot, but certainly, again, my number one is family and happiness of my kids and my husband, our family life and our extended family is all I can hope for.